So this task here says write a function that reverses a string. This is similar to the task we did here. In this case, we are told write a function that print a string in reverse. It prints the string after reversing it. But in this case, we are told that write a function that reverses a string. So I think the solution should be similar with that of the above. I'm going to leave this for you. Okay, try and whiteboard it. Write everything you think the possible difference. Okay, you've already seen how I did the above code. Try to figure out the difference between these two. If there is any problem, then we'll discuss this later on. Okay, but I'm going to leave this for you. I just want to see how you can be able to relate this with the above task here. If there is any issue, like I said, we are going to talk about it. Okay, so here says write a function that prints every other character of a string, starting with the first character followed by a new line. Every other character. Let me show you this. We are asked to print every other character. Let me see the question again. It's a string, right? Okay, it's a string, every other character. So let's say you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When you are told to print any other character starting from the first digit, it means print this one, then skip this, then print this one, skip this, print this one, then skip this. Let's say there's 6 here, then print this. Okay, that's also what they mean, every other character. So print the first one, skip the second one, print the third one, skip the fourth one, print the fifth one, skip the sixth one. That's just what this is trying to ask from you. So how do we do this here now? So firstly, let me copy my function prototype. Let me take it to my header file. I think next time I will just copy all these header files, all these prototypes in the header files before I begin the session. I think it will be better and faster. So now let's open this file here, the file we are going to work on. So it should be vi, right? 6, sorry, I've copied it and I'm trying to type it, paste here. All right, so let me include my header file, hash include, sorry, hash include. Why am I skipping this H? I'm not pressing the shift key. I think that's why it's displaying something like this. So main.h. So now the function here, this is the function, right? So copy and then paste here. All right, so let's see how this is going to work. Print other characters of your string. Let's see the example here. As you can see here, this is the string here, right? It's been declared 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, right? Let me show you how this is going to be stored first. Let me delete this. We have from where? From 0 to 9, right? We have from 0 to 9. So I will say this is how it's going to be stored here. Let's say I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then the null byte here, right? So this is how it's going to be stored, like this. Like this, like this, like this, like this. Right? So this is index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? These are the difference in the different index as well. Okay. So we are asked to print them in order. Okay? In every order. Okay, we are asked to print them that way. So it means we will have to iterate the first one. We are told to print even the first one. Let me show you. We are told to write a function that print every other character of a string starting with the first character. It should start with the first character. So definitely we are going to print this. This should be printed. Then we will what? We will skip one here. And then this should be printed. We will skip this. And then this should be printed. We should skip this. And then this will be printed. Skip this. Print this. And then skip this. So what I'm trying to show you here is that we are going to create a loop, right? We are going to iterate from the first character here because we are asked to print even the first character, right? So when we create our loop, you know we normally increment. So in this case, we are to do 2 incrementation. So if our first loop holds this value of 0, so when it's normal, you know, in the when setting the condition, sorry, when creating the loop, we have to create an increment. So it will increment to this. And we don't want to print this. So for this, instead, since we don't want to print this, we have to do another increment within our loop so that it will take us to this. Let me show you what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to give you the idea here. So in this case, I will declare my I, which I'm going to use for my for my iteration. I will say for I should begin from where? From 0 here, right? The value of I should be 0. So I will say the variable name is str, right? So stri, we all know, we are all familiar with this condition now, right? It should be less than, it should not be equal to the null byte, okay? So if it reaches the null byte, then don't execute the loop. The null byte determines the end of the string, right? Then I will say I plus plus. So here what will happen? So I will say put char what? Put char stri. This will print the value of str for each iteration. So the first iteration is 0, right? So it's going to print the first index, which is in this case what? Let me open this, which is in this case 0. So when it prints this, you can see this condition here, I plus plus. So it's going to increment the value of I to what? To 1. So when it increments it to 1, then the loop will print this here now. And we are not interested in printing this. So since I don't want to print this, can simply come here. Oops. Sorry. Since I'm creating more than one line in the loop, I'll have to use a bracket here. Alright. So I can simply come here and say what? I plus plus. So what do you think this will happen? I'm trying to increment twice. I'm incrementing 2 times. So when the first loop runs, increment the first time. When you increment the first time, it's going to take you to this second element here. But I'm not interested in printing this. So I will say, then I said here, this increment here should increment the second time. So when it reaches this here, it will going to increment again and it will take you to the third element here. Okay? Hope you understood what I'm trying to do here. So it will increment it again. So now I will now hold the value of what? Of 2, sorry. The first iteration is for 0. It will print what? str index 0. When it print str index 0, then this will be, it will then execute this line, which is I plus plus. I is what? Is 0. It will now increment what? To 1. When it increments to 1, it will now come back and check for this condition again. So this is what? This is 2. So sorry, this is another increment. So it will increment to what? To 2. So now the value of I is 2. So str will now print what? Will now check for str2 here. So which is what? Let me open this. So and this is what? This is str2. This is it. So as you can see, we have skipped this. So str2 will be printed, which is 2 in this case, right? So if it print str2 here, it will then increment the value of I again to 3, right? After incrementing the value of I to 3, it will come back here and also increment the value of I to 4. So you can see we've skipped another item. So the value of I now will now hold what? 4. So this is str4 and str index 4 will be printed. In this case, this is str index 4. It will be printed. So now it will increase the value of I to what? To 5 by running this increment here. It will increase it to 5 by running this last increment. So when it increases it to 5, I'm not interested in printing the 5th index, right? So it will check for this increment again and it increment the value to 6 now. When it increment the value to 6, it will now check for the condition and then str6 will be printed, which is this in this case. So this is how you can get to iterate by skipping one index or the other, right? So I didn't mean I want to skip 2 index, right? I want to skip 2. Let's say I want to, after printing this, I don't want to print this. I want to print 3, then I want to skip this. So I can just add another what? I plus plus here. So it will increment thrice before what? Before running this. That's just what this is saying. Hope you understood this here. So now the next thing is what? Is to, I think Betty will give me an error here. There's a space. Or let me leave the space here. As you can see, there's a space here. So let me leave the space. Let's see if Betty will be happy with that. So I will just say here, for a new line, I will say put char here for new line. So this should be /n here, right? So our function is void. It does not return anything, right? So let me do my Betty documentation. So the function name is puts2, right? So what does it do? What does this do? It's let me just say print strings. Then what again? The function parameter at str. What does it do? Let me just say function parameter. Sorry, so the return, we are not returning anything, so it's 0. Sorry, I'm not supposed to put this. All right, so now let's run Betty on this file now and see the error. Betty, yes, so you can see it says trailing white space. We have a space at the end. When it says trailing, it means at the end. Okay, you have a white space in what, line 13 and also line 16. Trailing white space in line 13 and line 16 of this what, of this file 6put.c. so let me open the file. Line 13 and 16, right? So let me say set number. All right, so line 13, this is line 13, right? So let me see the space. Yes, you can see there's a space. Can you see where my cursor is blinking? So I'm supposed to press backspace to delete the space. So now you can see there is no space. So in line 16 again, as you can see in line 16 also there's a space. Can you see? Before the after the closing curly brace and where my cursor is currently blinking, there's a space. So you have to press the backspace to remove that space. So now Betty should be fine. So let's run Betty again. So now let's create our test file, which is 6main.c, right? So I'll say vi 6main.c. So paste this here. So let's save and exit. So now let's compile. All right, so it has been compiled. Let's run the compile file. Yes, so you can see we got 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, right? We got them in what? In every order. We have what? 1 to 9, but we got what? 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, just like this. Sorry, we got 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. So you can see we skipped some of the digit, right? We iterate over some of the digit and then skipped them. So this is just how you can do this. I hope I'm explanative enough, right? So let's create this and let's move to the next task here. Don't forget to add, commit and push, then run your check. Okay, so this function here, this question here writes a function that prints half of a string followed by a new line. So this task here says write a function that prints half of a string followed by a new line. So this is what this is saying. Let me delete this. So if you have something like this, I keep saying I'm happy. If you have something like this, right, with the byte terminator here, no byte. All right, so if you have something like this, you are expected to print only half of the strings. In this case, we have how many strings? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5, right? So you are expected to print what? Or before I consider that, let's say I have O here, right? I have O, right? So this is the null byte terminator. So you can see you have how many strings? We have 6 strings. So all what you are required to do is just print only half, 1 to 3, right? So just print only HAP. You are not asked to print PYO. So this should not be printed. Only HAP, because HAP is the half of the string. So in this case here, as you can see, it is only when you have an even number of strings. So before that, it means we have to know the length of the string, right? So we have to know the length of our string. When we know the length of our string, that is when we'll be able to what? To know half of the length. So let's say in this case we have 6 as the length of the string. So we have to say 6 divided by 2, right? Which is what? Which is 3. So that's how we'll be able to know how many digits, how many items we'll be printing. 6 items here, right? So let's say now we have this thing. We have an odd number of what? Of items. Let's say I have HAPPY here, then the null byte here. So as you can see here, what is the length of the string? The length is what? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5, and 5 is odd. So they have given us a condition for that here. They said what? If the number of characters is odd, the function should print last n characters of the string, where n is equals to length of the string minus 1 divided by 2. We've already been given this. So let me show you what this is. Take note of this. N is what? N is length of the string, right? Minus 1, then divided by 2. So this is what they mean here. If we have the length of the string here, we have is what? Is 5. So our n that we are asked to print should be what? Equals to, what is the length of the string? It is 5. It should be what? 5 minus 1, right? So which is what? 4, then divide by 2. So this will give us what? This will give us 2, right? So they said 5 length of the string minus 1 divided by 2. Our length of the string, I'm considering this, okay? The length of the string is 5. So 5 minus 1 is 4. So 4 divided by 2 is what? Is 2. So in this case, we are only going to print what? H and A, right? We are only going to print HA. 1, 2. Okay, so this is just what this is saying. Okay, that is if the number is odd. So if the number is odd, only subtract 1 from the total length of the number, then divide by 2. So you are expected to print that. Okay, if it is even now, just like I explained, if we have O at the end here, I will just say the number of items is what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6. I'll just say 6 divided by 2. Sorry, this is even, right? 6 divided by 6 is even. 6 divided by 2 is what? Is 3. So I will print what? 1, 2, 3. So I'll print HAP. Hope you understand. So that's just what we are asked to do here. So before we do that, you definitely know that we have to know the length of the string, right? Before I was able to do this, I had to what? Know the length of the string. So we have to, in our function, we have to find the length of the string first, right? So let's just open the file. Let me open my header file and paste this prototype here. So I say vi main.h here. So this should be, sorry. All right, paste. Okay, so now let's save and exit this. So let me just create this my test file now, so that if I finish writing the function, I'll just compile directly. So vi, the file name is 7main.c. Okay, so paste this here as well. This for testing, right? The testing main file. So now let's open the file here and begin to write our function, and let's see how the function is going to look like. So vi paste. Oops, whoa, sorry. Which am I working on? Which of the tasks am I even working on? Is it task 7, right? Yes. Yes, so I will include what? My standard library, sorry, my header file here, hash include main.h. Okay, so now this is the function info, right? Let me copy it, then paste here. All right, so what are we going to do first? Like I said, we have to determine the length of this string, right? Before we do anything, we have to know the length of the string. So we have to write the function to calculate the length of the string. We've seen how to do that, I think, even twice. So I will have to use a for loop, right? I will have to, let me use count here. I will have to initialize count. You know that the variable count holds our number of strings here. So I will just say for, right, for I equals to 0, I want to begin my iteration from the first index, right? So what's the variable name here? str I. This str is what? Is from this function parameter. Okay, take note of that. So stri is what? Not equals to the null byte terminator. By now you have been familiar, you must have been familiar with this condition. Then I plus plus, right? So I'm trying to get what? The number of strings. So I will say count plus plus. So this is what we did. Sorry, there's supposed to be a semicolon. So this is what we do, right? To normally find the length of the string. So here it says the function should print the second half of the string. Okay, so in this case here, we are not going to print HAP here. We are only going to print PYO here. This is the second half. Let me delete this and do this again. Let me show you. We have, let's say, software here, right? Software. So this is how they are stored, right? Software, right? Then the null byte terminator, right? So how many, what's the length of this string? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8, right? So it will be what? Length of the string, right, divided by 2. That will give us what? Half of the string. So which is what? 8 divided by 2, which is what? Which is 4. So we are only going to print 4 characters. So in this case, we are told to print only the second half. So this is the first half, right? This is the first half, SOFT. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the first half, right? The second half is this 5, 6, 7, 8. So we are only interested in printing this half now. That's just what this says. So how can we do this here? So what we are going to do here, we have to set a condition here. I will say if length, sorry, in this case, if count, right? Count holds my length of the string, right? So I will say if count modulo 2 is equals to 0. So what does this condition mean? It means if the string is what is even, right? Hope you know what this modulo 2 means, right? It means divide this variable here, the value here, by 2. If the remainder is equals to 0, then that means that is an even number. Anything you divide by 2, if the remainder is 0, is 1, is even, right? So that's why I use this modulo here. Learn the difference between this modulo operator and then the division operator. Okay, this returns what? This what helps you to know the remainder. Okay, it knows the remainder. So that's why I said, okay, if the length of the string divide by 2, or let me just say length here. Let me use length so that you'll be able to understand this. Let me just say LENGTH. So I'm trying to show you that TH, length of the string. So here I will say LEN, so the length of the string, right? So here I will say length again. Okay, so I'm saying if you divide the length of the string by 2, if it is equals to 0, so that means it is what is even. So if it is even, this is what I want to happen. I will create a for loop now to iterate over the entire string. Don't forget, we are only printing half of the string, and it is the second half of the string. How do we get half of the string? We divide the length by 2. That gives us half of the string. So where do I need to begin my iteration here? I will say for I want to begin my iteration from LENGTH divide by 2. So I want to begin my iteration from length divide by 2. Let me show you here. So here our length is 8. When we divide 8 by 2 is what? Is 4, right? This is what? Index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, index 4, index 5, index 6, index 7, right? So I want to begin my iteration from here. When you divide the length of the string, which is 8 by 2, we got what? We got 4. So I want to begin my iteration from the 4th index here. The 4th index here is the beginning of the second half. Let me do this again. You have to understand this thing. You have to understand this thing. I wrote something like this. O, F, T, W, A. Let me just stop here. I want to make it very big for you so that you'll be able to see this clearly. I did something like this. I wrote software. We have how many digits here? Sorry, characters. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or let me try and make it, let me put another S here. I want to make it odd. So you see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right? We have 7. The length of our string is what? Our length here is what? Is equals to 7. So we are interested in printing half of this. So how do we get to know the half of the string that is passed to the function? We simply have to what? Find the length of the string. When we find the length of the string, we divide it by 2. So length here, right, divide by 2 is what will give us half of the string. So in this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 here, divide by 2 is what? When we divide 7 by 2, we get what? We get 3.5, right? So, but in this case, 5 is not supposed to be there because of this operator here. So it's 3. So what will happen here? What will happen here? We've been given a condition that said if it is odd, then we have to what? Minus 1 from our length. So in this case, instead of saying 7 over 2, I will say 7 minus 1 all over 2. So which is what? 7 minus 1 is 6, right? 6 over 2 will give us what? Will give us 3 here. It's the same thing, right? We will get 3 here as well. So this means that we are only going to print 3 characters of this particular set of string. And these characters here, we are only going to print the last 3. Hope you understand this, right? Hope you understand this thing. So this is 1, 2, 3. So we are only going to print the second half, which is this. So let's see how to do this. Okay, I just hope you guys understood this. That's why I use this condition here. Okay, if my iteration should begin from what? Length divided by 2, right? That's half of the string. So I will say here, I will say str now I, right? The condition stri is not equals to this /0 here, right? By now you must have been familiar with this condition to iterate over a string. So this. So now I've set my for loop. So I will simply say put car here, put car here should be stri. So we all know what this does, right? So it's going to begin my iteration from what? Length divided by 2. If the length is 10, that is if what? If my length is an even number, right? If the length of the string is even. If the length of the string is even, it's going to jump into this for loop here. It will say, okay, begin the iteration from length divided by 2. Length divided by 2 is half of the string. If you have 10 string, length divided by 2 is what? 5. So it's going to begin iteration from the 5th index. Okay, let me show you this again. I just want you to understand all these things. That's why I'm taking my time to explain. So the first case here, we are considering what? For even number, right? If it is even. So I like using this HAPPYO, then this, right? This. Is this even? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, this is even. So I said, if it is even, right? If it checks the length, if the length is even, then it should jump into this loop. So this loop here says, begin your iteration from length divided by 2, right? So what is the length here? The length is what? Is 6. 6 divided by 2 is what? Is 3. So begin your iteration from index 3. So here we have 0, we have 1, we have 2, right? So begin your iteration from index 3, which is what? Which is this. So this is how I'll be able to get the second part printed. Hope you understand this thing. So begin your iteration from index 3. So that's just what this is saying. Begin your iteration from index 3. So keep iterating until you reach this last condition here. When you reach that, then exit the loop. Okay, so when you reach for each iteration, print the value that is in that index. Print the value that is stored in that index. That's just what this is saying. In the case of this L/2, in my own case here, if I use put car here, the first thing that will be printed is what? Is P. If it increment, it will go to 4, then Y will be printed. Increment and go to what? 5, then 0 will be printed. This is how you get the second what? Second part of what? Of the string. I hope you understand this thing. So I will now print a new line here. After the loop runs, then I will say put car, a new line here. Sorry, this should print a new line, right? So this is it. So I've now considered for what? If length is what? Is even, right? If the length is even. So here, as you can see, it says if the number of characters is odd, that is if the length is odd, right? The function should print the last n characters of the string, where n is equals to length of the string. Let me show you this. If the length is odd, right? If the length is odd, let's see this. If the length is odd, okay, if the length is odd, we have HAPPY. As you can see, this is odd, right? This is odd. We have something like this. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The length is odd here. So all what this question is saying, it says that, okay, if the length is odd, we should print the last n characters. And this last n characters is simply the length, right, minus 1. Then divide everything by 2. In this case, what is our length here? Our length is 5. Then minus 1, then over 2, which is equals to what? 4 over 2, which is equals to 2. So we are only interested in printing what? This is 0, right? This is 1, this is 2. So we are going to print from where? From 2 to 3 to what? To 4. Hope you understand this. This is just what this is trying to say. So let's see how to do this now. So I'll just say else if my condition above, if the length, right, modulo, right, 2 is not equals to 0, which makes it what? Odd. If the length modulo 2 is not equals to 0, then I will run this for loop again. I will say for I, right, I should begin my iteration from where? From length, let me show you, from length minus 1 over 2, right? You should first check the length and then minus 1 from the length and divide by 2. That's how we know that we are beginning our iteration from the second index here. We begin our iteration from where? Length, which is 5 in this case, minus 1 here, which is 4, then over 2, which is what? Which gives us what? Which gives us 2. So we know that we are beginning our iteration from index 2. So this is how we get to know where to begin our iteration. So here I'm going to say what? I'm going to say length. They've given us already. Can you see? They said, okay, the iteration should begin from length of string minus 1 over 2. Okay, so I'll just say length minus 1 here, then what? Then divide by 2 here. Okay, so this should be the initialization condition, right? This should be the initialization condition. So then this again. So I will now set the condition stri, right? Well, stri, right? Then what? Then I plus plus. Okay, so by now you must have been familiar with this. So this is the condition here for the for loop. So now I will just say put car, right? I will now print it. Put car should print what? Str, then I here, right? So then what? Then a new line. Put car to print a new line. So I'll say put car, /n. So I'm sure you guys understood all these things. Okay, just think deeply about this, read the question, think deeply about it, and go through this code I'm writing. You'll be able to understand what I'm trying to say. I've already explained for this if it is even. So now in this case, I said if it is odd, we've already been given. We said that here they said, well, if the number of characters is odd, the function should print the last n characters. And the last n character they said here is the length of the string minus 1 divided by 2. So I'm beginning my iteration from here up to the last character in the string. So that's why I set my condition like this. My iteration, my initialization to be this. And this, you all know why I use this. And then print for each iteration, print the value of I. Then exit the loop at the end and then print a new line. So that's just what I did here. I just hope you guys understood this. If there is any question, feel free to ask, okay? So now let's document our Betty. So I will say, what's the function name? Puts underscore half, right? So I'll just say print half of string. Then what's next? The function parameter, right? At str. What does at str does? Let me just say function parameter, right? Then what again? So our function is void, it's not returning anything. So I'll just say return, so say 0 here, right? So let's run Betty on the file and see. 7, okay, trailing white space in line 2. So let's see line 2. Okay, it should be here. Okay, yes. So remove the space. So save and exit and run Betty again. All right, so now Betty is happy. So now I've already created this test file. Let's compile the program now and see if it will work. So paste this here. So okay, I made a mistake in typing this putka. Let me correct the spelling. Where is it? Okay, this last part here. It should be, there should be an A here, right? Putka. All right, so save and exit. Let's compile again. All right, so you can see it has been compiled. So let's run the compiled file. Yes, so you can see you got what? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Just exactly like this. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so this is the string here, 0, 1, 2 up to 9. So the second part is what? is 789. Let's see how many strings are here. Now the length of the string here is 10. So when you divide it by 2, it means you are going to print what? From the 5th, right? Up to what? Up to the 9th. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this is just what the program is asking us to do. Just kind of sit down yourself, think, whiteboard this, try to develop your own method of solving this, then do these things. So now let's move to the next task. Write a function that prints n elements of an array. Okay, n element of an array of integers followed by a new line. All right, so where n is the number of elements of the array to be printed, numbers must be separated by comma followed by a space. Then the numbers should be displayed in the same order as they are stored in the array. You are allowed to use printf. Let's try to understand the question. Write a function that prints n element of an array of integer, where n is the number of elements of the array to be printed. Let's see this example here. As you can see here, this is an array, right? An array has been declared, and the size of the array here is 5, right? The size of the array is 5. It means this array is going to hold what? 5 elements of what? Integer type, right? Of integer type. So you can see here, array 0, that is the first index of this array, right? This is just the name of the array. It can be anything. Okay, so they just name it array. It can be anything. So it means that the first index of this array should hold the value 98, right? The second index should hold the value 42. The third index, which is 2, should hold the what? The value minus 198. So let's see the result here. What happened here, as you can see here, when they run the function here, this print array, they got 98, 402, minus 98, 298, and minus 1024. So what just happened? So indirectly, we are just asked to print the element of an array. Okay, the element of an array, right? So you can see here it says print array. This is where they call the function, and here they pass the array name, and here this is n. Here in this case n is 5. So let's see what is n. N is the number of elements of the array to be printed. If you want to print 10 elements of the array, just pass 10 here, and 10 elements of that array will be printed as far as the element inside the array reaches 10. So that's just what happened. So you can see here is 5. So it means we are printing how many elements? 5 elements. So you can see here we have 98, 402, 198, 298 minus 1024. So we got how many elements printed. So that's just what this task wants us to do. We should what? Print the n element of an array, where n is the number of elements in that array. Okay, so indirectly that's what this does. So let's copy the function prototype here and paste it on our main.h file. So sorry. All right, paste here. Okay, so let's save and exit here. So now the next thing is, let me create this test file here, this 8main.c. Copy this, then vi 8main.c, right? So paste this here. Okay, so it seems like something is not right here. Yes, seems like something is not right. It's supposed to be colored. Let me exit this. I think the file name, it's from the file name q. Okay, I use double vi. As you can see, I use 2 vi. All right, so I'll say enter. So now let me paste. Yeah, yes, no, not this. Oops, sorry. E. So let me copy this again. Let me just copy again. Copy this. Yes, so you can see now it has shown. So let me save and exit. So the next thing is to open the file in which you are going to write the code inside. So copy this. So vi, then the file name. So let me include my header file first. Include main.h, right? So what's the function? The function is this. I'm going to copy this here. All right. Okay, so you can see here this function takes in what? How many parameters? The first parameter, as you can see here, is a pointer to an integer, right? And the second parameter is an integer, n. N is the number of elements of the array that you want to print. Okay, So this is what, this is the array in this case, right? This points to what, to the array we are going to be using. So how do we do this now? So we have to iterate over the element of the array. As you can see here, they iterated from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how they got this printed, right? The first element, then the second element, the third, the fourth, the fifth. So we have to what? We have to use loops, right? So I will say int I, right, for my looping. So I will say I want to begin my iteration from index 0, right? That's the first element of the array. So I will say is equals to what? Is equals to 0, right? Then what next? So the array here is what? Is A. That's the name of the array, is A. So I will say A, then what? Then I, right? Then what again? What should happen here? So in this case here, we are told that n here is the what? Is the number of elements we want to print. N is the number of elements. So your array might have 20 elements, but you might only be interested in printing just 10, right? So we are not printing everything of the array. We are printing a particular part of the array. If we have 15 array and you set n to be 5, you are only going to get the first 5 elements of the array. So what will be our condition here in this case? What will stop this loop from running? So this loop should only stop when what? When A is what? Is n here. So what did I mean here? I mean that my iteration of I should stop when what? When it is less than n. If n is 5, we are printing from where? Index 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you count from 0 to 5, you will get 6 what? 6 elements. But we are supposed to what? Get 5. That's why I use less than here. Okay, it should be less than. Right? So this is saying that the element, the first element here, 0. Right? The first iteration, sorry, A0 should be what? Less than A what? If n is 5, should be less than A5. Right? It's just that I'm trying to compare I and what? And n. Sorry, I'm just trying to say I should be less than n. Hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Let me try doing this thing. If it works, then fine. Let me just say I should be less than what? Should be less than n in this case. Okay, I should be less than n. Then what next? So I will just say I plus plus. Hope you understand this. So I'm just trying to say that my iteration should stop when n and when I is less than n. I did not say I is equals to n. I did not say I is equals to 10, because if I'm trying to get the fifth element, I will have to subtract 1 from 5, because the counting begins from where? 0. Right? If I say less than or equals to 5, it means it's going to get even the sixth element. But when you say less than 5, it means 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. You can see 5 digits. Right? So I will now come here and say what? Now, I will now set a condition. So as you can see from here now, let me show you. The elements have what? Comma and the space. Comma and the space, comma and the space. But the last element here does not have this comma and the space. So how will I get this comma and space and printed only for this element here, excluding this? So I have to set a condition here. Right? So I can say if, right? I can say if I is not equals to what? Is not equals to n minus 1. N minus 1 is what? N minus 1 is the last element here. Hope you're understanding this thing. N minus 1 is the last element. Right? As you can see here, this is what? 5. Right? And this is the number of elements we want to print. This is 5. N is 5. Sorry, this is it. N is 5. So the last element is what? How do I get this last element here? Is what? N minus 1. 5 minus 1, that's what gives us 4 here. So I'm trying to say if I is not equals to the last element, indirectly I'm referring to the last element here. Okay, if I is not equals to the last element, then it should do this. It should say printf, right? Since I'm allowed to use printf this time, so %d, I'm displaying what? An integer, then comma, right? And then space. Hope you understand this, because of this comma and space in here. So that's why I set this condition. If the value of I is not equals to the last element, then it should get this printed. Then I will now say what? I will say a, then I. It should print what? The index of that array. Right? So else, That is what? That is if I is equals to n minus 1. That is if I is now the last element. If the value of I is now the same as what? The last element, then what will happen? Then I will just say printf, right? Percentage, it should be percentage d, right? Then no comma and no space. Okay, so I will just say print the index. I hope this is clear. So what next again? So the next thing is to print our new line after what? After the for loop. So this is it. Let me say /n. So what just happened? What did I do here? We are told to get the number, the element of an array, right? And you can see from the function prototype here, we have n. And they said what? Sorry, and they said n is the number of elements to be printed, right? N is the number of elements to be printed. So if I have array of 20 characters, like I said, if I put n, whenever I call the function here and I pass in n as the number of element I want to print, it should only print 5, it should only print what? 10 element of that array for me. So that's why I said for I is equals to 0, I want to begin my iteration from the first element of what? Of the array. So I said I is less than n, right? It means that this condition, when this condition is true, it should go into the loop. So what does this mean? It means that I should be less than n. N is what? The number of items we want to print. If n is 5, it means I should be less than 5. Why is it that I should be less than 5? Because we are begin our iteration from 0. So if you count from 0 to 4, you have 5 elements, which is what we are interested in printing, right? Then increment. So the next thing is, the next thing I considered is here. I can see there is a comma and a space in here. So, and you can see the last element here is not supposed to have a comma and a space. So I said, if I, right, if the value of I is not equals to the to n minus 1. N minus 1 is simply the last element. This is how we got the last element I've shown you here, right? N is passed as 5 here, but the last element, as you can see here, is 4. It means n minus 1. That's why we get 4. So if I is not equals to 4, right? If value of I is not equals to the last element, it should print this. With what? With a comma and a space, as you can see here. Else, that is if I is equals to the last element. If the value of I is the same as the last element, then it should just print this without the comma and the full stop. Hope you got this, okay? So now let's run Betty. Let's do our documentation. Sorry. So I will say this. Let's paste the function name. What does the function does? Let me just say print elements of an array, right? Then what function parameter is we have at a, right? Let me just say function parameter. Then we have at n as well, another function parameter. Just be descriptive, okay? Write what those parameters do, okay? So what next? Our function is void. It doesn't return anything. So I'll just say this. All right. So now let's run Betty on this file. So Betty, right? It's all right. So spaces around what that minus sign is required. Okay, line 15. As you can see, line 15, right? So let's open line 15. Let's set number to see which line. All right, this is line 15. Okay, as you can see here, around the minus sign I used here, there's supposed to be a space here. I forgot about that. So space and space. All right, so let's now run Betty again. Good. So let's compile now and see if the program will work. So paste here. Oops. So we have errors here. As you can see, printf, printf, printf. It shows us that we have not included the standard library for printf, which is true. So let's do this now. Let's go back here. We have to include the standard library of printf here. So but instead of me to include the standard library here, I can just go to my header file and include the library. Since I've already included my header file, then it will what? It will check for the standard library for printf and it will work fine. So instead of any time I'm going to use printf, I will have to what? include library here, I can just go back to my header file here. Let me clean this. I can just go to my header file and include the standard library here. So I will just say hash include stdio.h. So now I've already included this standard library in what? In my header file. And my header file has been included in my C file. So I don't have any problem of including this in my C file. It has already been included in my header file. So no problem now. So let's save and exit. Let's compile the program again. So you can see now it worked, right? So now let's run the file. Yes, so you can see we got 98, 402, minus 198, 298 to 1024. Can you see? 98, 402, 198. We got exactly the same thing. So this is just what this is asking. Just print the element of the array. Just that n should be the number of elements you should print. Okay? So don't forget to add, commit, and push to your GitHub, then run your checks. So now let's move to the next task here. This task here says, what? Write a function that copies the string pointed by this source, okay, including the terminating null byte, all right, to the buffer pointed to by dest. Return value the pointer to dest. So this function here, this standard library here, strcpy, does the same thing. All what this does is just that it copies string from one array to another. It's just like copying one thing from one place to another. So that's just what we are interested in doing here. We should create a copy of this, right? So let me copy this to my header file, and let's see how to begin writing this function. Okay, so let me just come here. Okay, so paste. All right, so let's save and exit. So let me copy this test file now. All right, so vi9 main.h, .c. So paste this here. So let's save and exit as well. So now let's open the file. This is the file we work on. So vi paste here. Good. So let me include my header file main.h. Okay, sorry, I have to copy the function. This is a function C. All right, so we are trying to copy a string, right? What does the program says? The question, write a function that copies string pointed to by source. So the string we are trying to copy is here in this array. This is what? This is a pointer. As you can see, this is a pointer to a character, right? So the string we are copying is in what? Is in this src, right? And then we are trying to copy it to this, which is also a pointer, dest. So that's just what this is asking us to do. So it means that we are going to iterate, right? We are going to iterate from where? From the beginning of the arrays of the strings stored in this, and then we are going to store them in this. This is iteration. Let me just show you this. Let me see if I can explain this here. So let's say we have something like this. This. Let's say this hold, let's say STA, sorry, T, this should be T, this should be TE, right? State, right? Let's say this is it. And this is what? This is SRC. Okay, this is SRC. This is the pointer to this. Okay, so now we have what? Another variable here. We have nothing inside. Okay, we have nothing inside. Is what? Is dest, right? So all what we are asked to do is to copy this to be here, copy this 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 here. It says including the terminating null byte. So when you copy all this in here, we have also state, right? We have state here as well. So at the end, we should return what? we should return dest, the copied array. So we are to return this at the end. So this is just what this is saying. Just from this, copy this. Okay, so let's see how we are going to do this here. So we are simply going to iterate from where? From this SRC, right? We'll iterate for each element of this. We are going to store it in here. Then move to the next iteration. After the element of this should be stored here. The element of this, that's how we are going to be iterating and be storing every iteration. Hope you understand. So I will say int I here, right? So the first thing I will do here is what? I will give a condition here. Let me write the condition. I'll explain to you what this is. If I say if dest is equals to what? Is equals to null. Is equals to null. So what does this mean? It means that if there is no destination provided, as you can see here, this dest is what? Is where we are going to copy the file, the content of this SRC. So if it is not provided, it means there is no way we are going to copy it. The compiler has nothing to do with that. We don't have a place to do this. So we are just going to say return what? I can simply say return null. So if there is no array declared for this, then I don't have anything to do with this. So we cannot do anything about that. So just take note of this. Okay, it's not necessary you must do this, but it's good. Okay, just consider all conditions. So now what am I going to do? I'm going to begin my looping here, right? I will say for I, my iteration should begin from the first index. That's the first element of the array, right? For I equals to 0, right? Then what is the variable? What's the array I'm copying from? Is SRC. So I will say SRC I, right, should be what? What should be the condition? SRC I is not equals to 0. So this is the condition for us to iterate from the first to the last string, right? So I will say I plus plus here. Okay, so now this is the for loop. So what should happen? This will what? This will iterate from the first element. This is it. Since I'm interested in copying from this, so that loop I created, it will iterate from the first element, second, third, fourth, fifth, up to the last. Okay, it's not actually going to iterate here because I've set a condition that this should not be included. So it will iterate over this, right? So now I want to store each iteration in this place here, dest. For iteration, when it encounters the first character, it should store it here. When it encounters the second character, store it here. The third, store here. The fourth, store here. That's how I'm going to create a copy. So how do I do this? So I can simply say what? SRC, which is the source, right? I can say, okay, so for each iteration, for each element of this source, store it inside this variable here, which is what? Which is dest. Dest I. Hope you understand. So I'm saying that for each iteration, if I is equals to 0 now, the first iteration, okay, check for what? Source I, which is source 0, right? Index 0. So the element of index 0 should be stored in what? In dest as what? Dest 0. That's just what is happening here. Okay, so it will increment. I will now be equals to 1. If I is 1, it will check for what? Source index 1, right? So it will check is source index 1 equals to this node, then it will jump to this. So it will now store the value that is in source index 1 into what? Dest index 1. So you can see I'm creating a copy of this, right? The indexes are the same. So I'm creating a copy of all these things. If I is 10 here, so I'm storing the what? The 10th index of source into the 10th index of dest. This is just what I'm doing. So this is like copying. You are creating a copy of that in another place, right? Hope you are getting this. So the next is just to return. We are asked to return what? To return, let's see, return value, the pointer to dest. So we can simply say return dest here. Dest has already been declared as a pointer here. So we can just say return dest, don't include the asterisk. If you put the asterisk here, then it's like you are dereferencing. Okay, so this is it. So now let's explain to Betty what the function does. So I can copy this here. So paste. Oh, sorry. I have to do this. All right. Paste. Yes. So what does this does? What's the function of the? So what does the function does? Copies what? Copies string. Then what again? So we have to explain to Betty at dest and what at src. These are the function parameter. So I will say at dest, I will just say destination array, right? Then at what as src, I will call it source. Let me do this. Source what? Source array. Then what our function is returning dest, right? So I will say return. What should be the description here? So I will just say destination, or let me just say copied string. So that's the string that was copied, right? So I will close this now. So let's save and exit. So now let's run Betty on the file and see if Betty will be happy with this. So okay, so you can see it says trailing statement should be on the next line. Okay, line 12. Let's see what happened. Line 12. Sorry, let me display the number. I can't count this. Set number. Okay, line 12. Okay, it says trailing. Oh, sorry. I added the return. It's because this is Betty, but I didn't mean you had to bypass Betty. This statement here is still correct. Okay, it's still correct. Since you are considering only one line of the statement, you can just say this and then return this. But this, since this is Betty, I have to do what Betty says. Okay, so I just take this to a new line. So that's the problem. So let's run. Let's compile again. All right, let me copy this again. What's the command to compile? Okay. I was running Betty, not compiling. I thought I was compiling. So yes. Whoa, parentheses are required on a return statement. I think I have parentheses. Why? What is happening between me and Betty again here? Sorry, Betty. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, so now Betty is fine. So let's compile this thing, the program. Yes, so it has been compiled. Let's run it. Before that, let me clear the screen. So let's run the file. So you can see we got what? First solve the problem, then write the code. This is the main file, and then this is what the copied file. Sorry, the copied what? The copied function. So as you can see, the copied string, sorry. So you can see we got this and then we got this. So this is just how this is supposed to work. So the next thing is to add commit and push to GitHub. But let me show you something here. If I decide, I can remove this here. Like I said, I'm just trying to give you, you just have to consider other conditions, right? So if I like, I can just remove this. It will still work. So let's save this. If you are confused about what that does, so just remove it. That if statement I put initially, just remove it. So I can compile. So now let me run the compiled file again. So you can see it still works. Okay, it still works. So there are a lot of ways to do these things. Okay, there are a lot of ways to solve a problem. So add, commit, and push to a GitHub, and then run your checks. Okay, so let's move to the next task here. Yes, so these are the last two tasks. The task 10, task 11. I've been testing them. It's not working. As you can see, my checker is even running. Okay, the last two tasks here. So we find a way of coming up with the solution to this. It's either I give the document, the Google Doc, the link to the Google Doc with the explanation of the code. That is if I was able to find, to develop the code. Okay, if I'm not able to find them, then I think maybe amongst you someone can help in a way to figure out all these things. I'm sure by now you guys must have been equipped, right? So thank you very much. This brings us to the end of today's session. We'll meet in our next session.